Most of us spend our lives strategizing how to avoid what we fear, rather than pursuing what we genuinely want. It's a quiet but powerful shift in perspective. The difference between forever dodging negatives and actively reaching for positives. We get taught to brace for the worst, constantly scanning for threats, whether they're financial, emotional, or social. Then we wonder why we feel stuck or uninspired. We can see this pattern in everyday decision-making. Instead of asking, "What lights me up?" we often think, "What if it all goes wrong?" Or, "How do I keep things from falling apart?" That underlying fear might protect us from immediate harm, but it also locks us into a defensive stance. Before we know it, our entire worldview revolves around shoring up walls against potential pain. We may end up with minimal damage, but we've also minimized our chances of discovery, growth, and genuine fulfillment. The trouble is that many influential voices, even those promising guidance on success, sometimes push an avoidance-first mentality. They highlight every worst-case scenario to the point that you can't help but stay on guard. But if you look deeper at how they live, they aren't following their own advice. They're often driven by bold visions of what they want to create, not paralyzed by what they want to avoid. This contradiction can be confusing, leading you to question whether you're missing some hidden formula for living with more joy. The real difference lies in orientation. Are you oriented toward the vision of what you want, or are you forever scanning the horizon for what you don't? It matters because you can't fully chase both at once. Attention is a finite resource. If 90% of it is spent on crisis avoidance, there's not much left for innovation or the pursuit of genuine passions. Over time, that skewed ratio leads to a sense that you're merely surviving. You watch others who seem fearless, building their dreams, wondering why you never gave yourself that same permission. Consider the stark image of someone on their deathbed. In this scenario, that person might realize that nearly every choice in life was made to steer clear of something unpleasant. Heartbreak, disappointment, judgment. They never flip the question, what if I took a risk towards something I love? This question can feel radical because it threatens the safety nets we've built. But that safety often comes at the expense of excitement, discovery, and authentic growth. Living defensively can become so ingrained that our minds default to it automatically. If we face a career decision, we think, which option has fewer risks, rather than, which option is more aligned with my aspirations? If we're starting a relationship, we ask, is there a chance I'll get hurt? Instead of, could this deepen my capacity for connection and love? We might not realize how consistently we operate in this protective mode because it's woven into our culture. Fear-based thinking often masquerades as prudence, but it's really about minimizing exposure to the unknown. By contrast, individuals who appear to create meaningful results in life typically flip the script. They ask, what do I want to build? How do I contribute something valuable? What's the next step in expanding my potential? If they worry about risks, it's still secondary to their core drive. That doesn't mean they ignore hazards. It means they don't let fear set the agenda. Their primary question isn't, how do I run from pain, but how do I move toward passion or purpose? Moving toward what you love has a subtle but powerful effect on your day-to-day existence. When you're in pursuit of something compelling, you're less inclined to fixate on negative outcomes. The focus is on creation, exploration, and learning. Ironically, this approach can sometimes address the same fears more effectively because building something positive tends to fortify you against external threats. For example, if you're passionately cultivating your skills in a certain field, you often become more employable or entrepreneurial, which indirectly reduces financial fear. You didn't reduce that fear by running away. You did it by running towards something that inspired you. It's also worth noting that avoidance is a never-ending project. There's always more to fear. It's impossible to cover all the bases because uncertainty is part of life. People who rigidly chase zero-risk strategies often find that new threats keep emerging. That's emotionally draining and often unproductive. In contrast, leaning into your genuine desires provides an energizing sense of progress. You might still face setbacks, but those setbacks become part of an unfolding journey rather than a sign you failed at preventing bad things from happening. This difference in mentality also shapes how we interpret challenges. An avoidance mindset might say, "I failed because I didn't plan for every worst-case scenario." A creative or expansive mindset says, "I learned a new lesson that will help refine my approach." Both individuals might encounter identical difficulties, but their interpretations differ radically. One sees proof that nothing is safe, while the other sees an opportunity to strengthen and adapt. There's also a social dimension here. A person preoccupied with avoidance tends to draw similar energy from those around them, reinforcing the cycle. "Be careful. Watch out. Don't get your hopes up." These comments become the norm, offering a sense of communal caution but rarely fueling growth. On the other hand, someone who's fueled by ambition, vision, or curiosity tends to attract a more forward-thinking network. They exchange ideas about possibilities rather than fixate on pitfalls. None of this implies we should ignore genuine risks. There's a difference between healthy caution and letting fear be your life's compass. Healthy caution is about understanding limitations and probable outcomes. It's rational and measured. Letting fear dominate, however, means we live in a constant state of reaction, always scanning for the next calamity to avoid. That approach stifles creativity, risk-taking, and the joy of genuine engagement with the world. A life defined by avoidance can leave you feeling like you never truly started living. You might manage to sidestep a handful of difficulties, but at what cost? The intangible cost is often the regret of missed opportunities, unexplored passions, or even the absence of meaningful relationships that never formed because you were too busy safeguarding yourself. It's a trade-off, and it's perfectly fair if some people choose risk minimization. But it's equally vital to note that risk minimization is never foolproof. Random events happen. No matter how much you plan, life has a way of surprising us. Ultimately, the shift in mindset doesn't require a total rejection of caution. It's about reprioritizing. Instead of automatically asking, "How do I keep from losing?" we start with, "What do I gain from living in a way that excites me?" That alone can trigger a reorientation of your daily life. You begin investigating what gives you energy, what skills you truly want to refine, and what experiences bring meaning. Avoiding what you hate may keep you alive, but pursuing what you love can make life worth living. Once this perspective takes root, it's hard to go back to a purely defensive stance. You realize how much you've left on the table by never looking for what actually fulfills you. The question, "What do I want to create?" becomes more enticing than, "What must I avoid?" Your life narrative shifts from a story of evading disasters to a story of building dreams, even small ones. Over time, you see how turning toward your aspirations doesn't just bring a sense of purpose. It often ends up providing a form of security you never expected, because success, big or small, generates its own resilience. There will always be a million reasons to worry about potential catastrophes. And yes, some might come to pass, but you can live in fear of that possibility, or you can channel your energy into something that helps you grow and adapt so you're better equipped to handle setbacks when they arise. You might not eliminate fear, but you learn to guide it, transforming it into a motivator rather than a jailer. One day you may look back and see that the moments you cherished weren't the ones where you successfully dodged trouble. They were the ones where you took a leap towards something meaningful. At the end of the journey, if all you have is a list of things you avoided, you might wonder why you never branched out. Conversely, if you can point to the passions you pursued, the goals you explored, and the relationships you nurtured, that becomes a life truly lived. Shifting from avoidance to attraction isn't just about happiness, it's about participation. It's deciding to engage actively with possibility rather than remain a passive caretaker of fear.